This is a Sound Legacy production.
Well, hello and welcome to the Sound Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Couch, and I've got a great guest with me today. He is someone I've been wanting to meet for a while. He's a gerontologist and very much helping older adults in our community. I'm very pleased to welcome David Knepler. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you came here at all, but specifically because my invitation was so wildly vague.
It was amazing, but I understand that one has to see through the lines, to really get the message.
I'm glad that you've made that up just now. That's very helpful. No, you and I briefly met at the Marin section on aging, and you were on your way out. You've just recently retired from your position at LITA, and I find that compelling for a number of reasons. One, you told me you're in your 70s, early 70s, and you've been working with older adults most of your career. I aspire to have a long career working with older adults. I share a similar passion, but I'm 30 years behind you.
Oh, okay.
Well, fewer than 30 if I'm doing my math right. But so I want to talk to you about that, what it's like to be, a little closer to the people that you've been helping all this time.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get there, I kind of want to go on a little journey through your life. We are currently sitting in Marin County. You're not from Marin County.
No, I'm from Connecticut. Grew up in Trumbull, Connecticut, which is near Bridgeport. My father was a professor at the University of Bridgeport for most of his career. He also taught at some other places. He was also a marriage counselor, also a hypnotist.
Wow.
He was a traveler. Loved to go to different conferences all over the world. So and then as he got older, the University of Bridgeport said, hey, want to start up our gerontology program for us? Because he was in the right age group. So he did that. My mother was a glazier. So she had a part of a family business that my grandfather, who was from the old country, started in the early 1920s in Connecticut.
It's a glazier.
Cuts glass, windows, mirrors. Okay, yeah. So there was my grandfather, and then his five siblings worked for him. And so my mother was the blue collar, and my father was the professor.
Very nice. Have you been hypnotized? Did your father ever hypnotize you?
He tried. For whatever reason, because I was a kid, my mind raced too much or something, and so it didn't work for me, but I certainly saw it work.
Wow. You're sure it didn't work? Or did he program you to believe that it didn't work?
Exactly. I snapped his fingers.
Yeah, suddenly one day you're going to hear the right command and snap out of it. Is it true some people just are not hypnotizable? Like some people are sort of...
It's for some reason. I don't think it's a majority, because I've certainly seen him do group sessions. I've seen him do individual sessions. Where it really is a benefit outside of people maybe who have suffered some kind of trauma, but I saw him help people, for example, quit smoking.
With it?
Yeah, by getting them to imagine that whatever that thing they were bringing to their mouth was actually the food that they hated the most. So if it was, zucchini, if it was spaghetti, there's a person I saw who didn't like spaghetti. I mean, what kind of anti-American is that? But whatever, it was, it felt like they were about to put a worm in their mouth. And that's what he had them,
Wow.
And so they would.
And that's long-term effective. That helps people indefinitely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many sessions it takes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't bring you here just to talk about hypnotherapy, but I was very curious.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they say the cobbler's children have no shoes, but no therapist's child has no... Do you have siblings?
I have an older brother.
Has he been hypnotized? Do you know? Did it work on him?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if my father ever tried with it.
Okay.
Okay, he was
fair enough.
But he did hypnotize my mother.
That was the follow-up.
While he was born.
Wait.
So this was
while she was giving birth.
So 1951, first birth, and so as she was going through contractions and was in the hospital, he hypnotized her into a state of relaxation so that she would have as far as we know, a painless birth.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Didn't do that when you were born.
No, I think my second kid,
She'll be
had
fine.
me out. You know, who cares?
Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Wow. Okay. So you got the blue collar, you've got the academic in the household. What was exciting to you as a kid? What were you up to?
Looking back with great despair, I was a good kid, and you know, I read a lot of books, loved going to the library. Sports was the big thing, you know, and playing sports, which was marginal, but being a fan of sports, the New York teams, in all different sports, and going to games, you know. So I think those were the things that I was in as I was a young person, and then being a pretty good. And this is kind of my first exposure to gerontology and sociology. Being a kid who got their homework done, and it would be in Connecticut and be snowing, and you couldn't go out and play, my father would say, help me grade my papers. So I was in 4th and 5th grade correcting college papers, multiple choices and fill in the blanks, and true and false about Margaret Mead.
Wow.
You know, and about a little bit later about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, you know, and all these different things that were just kind of getting into my brain, you know, as an elementary school kid.
Yeah.
You know, and then I stopped doing my homework. So
Yeah. Sociology through osmosis,
Yeah.
and then normal teenage stuff kicked in, and
Yeah.
you started
Yeah.
discovering other things.
Other things,
Yeah.
but yeah. But again, you know, graduated high school, went off to college for 4 years, Washington College, which was in Chestertown, Maryland, Eastern Shore. Small school at the time, had about 800 students. Had declared a major in drama and act, and was kind of ahead on my credits, so I took a semester off in 1975 and had lived in Greenwich Village.
Oh, wow.
Lived in Greenwich Village in 1975. I was 19, going on 20, and it was
That was great.
it was wonderful, you know. And once you feel that you can master the New York subway system, you own the world.
Yeah.
You know, people from all different languages will come up and ask you directions,
Yeah.
and you can get them there. You know, so I went to acting school in Greenwich Village, HB Studio, Herbert Berghoff, and by the end of that semester, I was cured of wanting to become an actor because there were so many more. Everybody who you met, every cab driver, every waiter, every waitress, was really an actor, but they were just doing this as their day job. And I could see in my classes just how much more talent there was. So
Did
I
you
went
go
back
to school with anyone that we would know about, or?
not at HB Studio. Some of the professors, some of the teachers like Herbert Berghoff, his wife Uta Hagen, and then a couple of other people were bit actors in movies and plays. But at Washington College, one of my colleagues was Linda Hamilton.
Really?
Yeah, Linda Hamilton, and the famous story of Linda Hamilton is where you can read in Wikipedia or look up her biography, is our college professor encouraged her to find a different major because there was no chance that she was ever going to make it. And she dropped out and went to some other school, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, she was generally a nice person.
Yeah. Well, what convinced you, other than just seeing the pool of talent? Was there anything that you were like driven to something else, or was it just like, okay?
Well, I was, went back to college, loaded up on the philosophy classes, because you're in your early 20s and you want to.
It's the time to do it.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to go on to a liberal arts school where, they don't teach you what to think, but they teach you how to think.
Yeah.
So you get exposed to all, and you have all these requirements and all these different subjects. So, there was two things. One is, just the reality that given how much competition there was, it was going to be a long haul if and when I was ever going to be successful. And then secondly, just really living in New York really exposes you to so many issues. And I had always had a pretty open political view of things, an expansive political view. My father, who I mentioned earlier, had actually been editor, the editor of the Daily Socialist newspaper back in the early 30s in Connecticut. He had done this thing, which he told us about when he was in college. It was interesting. When my father graduated from high school, I think he was living in New Jersey at the time. He was told, he applied to Yale. This was 1928 or so, 27, 28. And he was, the rejection letter that we have says, we've already satisfied the quota from your race, being Jewish. So when you drive in New Haven and you see the Hebrew letters spelling out, Eli Yale, it was really interesting. So he was rejected from attending Yale. He went to Rutgers. He did eventually go to Yale for his PhD. But he told the story that after he graduated from college, we're all aware of the freedom riders of the 60s coming to your neck of the woods. And my father did the same thing in the 1930s. He and two other college friends, socialist college friends, and a black speaker from Africa came and lined up all these speaking engagements at colleges in the South in the 1930s. And they got in their car and drove down to the South, and people would come up to them particularly after the African man had spoken, and said, "That was wonderful, that was inspiring. We suggest you get out of town before sundown."
Right, yeah.
So, very easily I could not be here at this moment, So anyway, to get back to your question, so after I went back to college and, just kind of understood that I needed to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I became just more politically aware and engaged at that point.
Just thinking chronologically right now to jump back. So your father had you later in life. I mean,
my father, he was born in 1911. So he was going on to 44, and my mother was going on to 40 when I was born.
So by the time you were in your 20s, your dad's in his 60s, and you just had sort of an older perspective than most of your contemporaries, right. I imagine.
Yeah, in a number of different ways, just in terms of manners, in terms of, role in society. But then also that's kind of, to jump forward, that's kind of when I first started taking gerontology classes at San Francisco State as a grad program, it was that awareness that my parents were going to be going through things earlier than my friends' parents were. My friends' parents were more, so I just thought, I just want to get a little bit of a head start and just kind of start building awareness as to, what I'll be facing as, as an adult child.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize I was just going to get hooked on it.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're a budding political awareness. Did you have this desire to help, or what was it that you wanted?
A couple of different things.
Do?
One was, help. Learned about land usage. So, I became a vegetarian in 75 and a non-dairy vegetarian in 78.
Has that stuck?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've been basically vegan since 1978 and vegetarian since 75. So in terms of land use, Francis Moore LePay, the different texts about land usage, and then nuclear power. So I remember I was 1977. I was living with a woman up in Franconia, New Hampshire. She was going to Franconia College. Had no idea about. All of a sudden, it was in May of 1977, and all the students were gone. And where had they gone? They had gone down to Seabrook, New Hampshire, to protest this nuclear power plant that was happening. And I didn't know anything about it. So I got educated, went down there. I was part of the support group. 1,414 people were arrested. And I was being held, I was, we had a support camp that was set up. And they said, and so the governor, it was kind of this chess match with the Governor Meldrum Thompson, who thought, okay, I'm going to arrest all these people. They're going to pay these heavy fines to get out. And because they're all going to want to go back to college and take their final exams. Well, he didn't know college students.
Yeah.
So it was like, I can get out my final exams by staying. So the only place in southern New Hampshire that can accommodate all these folks was the Armory. So the Armory had turned into this campus for all these protesters, mostly college students. And he ordered the guards to keep the doors open so that the students would leave on their own when they got tired of eating, Armory food. So we came up with a plan of like, well, let's sneak on in. So he's got more people to feed. So that was my first time being quasi-arrested, was going there and sneaking into the Armory. Wow. And then later that summer, there was a nuclear power action at Trojan Nuclear Power Plant up in Washington. And at that protest, it was held during Hiroshima and Nagasaki days, August 6th through 9th. And on August 9th, we went limp, and we did get arrested, and we got transported to the drunk tank in Portland, because again, that was the only place big enough to hold everybody and to process everybody. So I don't know what that says about Portland, but so that was where I was arrested for nuclear power action. Each group had their own little name, and our group was No Nukes of the North.
What'd that teach you?
Eventually, we were all found not guilty because there was a technicality, which, again, those lawyers that are amazing that support progressive movements and donate their time, found that where we were arrested, we were on the railroad tracks leading into Trojan Nuclear Power Plant. There was one woman that had a poster that said her frustration about nuclear power was just the possibility, just like what we learned later about 3 Mile Island and what could go wrong. Her sign said, every woman knows that a Trojan is only as good as the man who operates it. So we were found not guilty because the railroad tracks were actually federal property. They did not belong to
wow.
Portland General Electric or whatever it was called.
Wow.
And so
the protesters weren't aware of that. It just happenstance. The good attorney found a way to
get us all off.
So that's what you learned. Make sure you have a good lawyer.
Well, and that there are some amazing lawyers. I mean, you look at ACLU, you look at so many people who fight for tenants' rights and people who fight for the rights of elderly. I mean, some lawyers are held up as punching bags. There's also an amazing amount of lawyers who understand our legal system and use it to protect citizens.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Just to jump ahead, how do you feel about nuclear power now?
I still think that there's no way we'll ever be safe. I think I do believe in renewable energies. I think that we haven't really scratched the surface of what we can do with solar and wind and if you ever spend any time in eastern Canada and you see those tidal bores, or you go to Niagara Falls. I mean, there's lots of other ways. I think that I know that they're hoping to reopen. I believe Diablo Canyon. They're also hoping to reopen Alcatraz. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hope and good ideas don't always go hand in hand. It's interesting. I mean, there's so many ways to sort of shake the peach out of that tree. That's the design and use and the way you operate things. I mean, we're coming from a different mindset of how we use energy.
Right. And there still also will always be, I believe, the issue with nuclear power of what to do with the nuclear waste.
Right, the disposal.
Right. So.
Okay. So I didn't bring you here to talk about hypnosis or
All right, where are we
yeah,
here?
what
Why
are we
am I
doing here?
here?
Well, it's fascinating to me though, because like what you said, the impulse to want to help and to be useful to a cause. My parents were a bit older than most of my peers. My siblings, my parents every 10 years had 2 kids. Not the best plan.
We get built-in babysitters.
Yeah, right. Sort of. Yeah. You got hand-me-downs,
Mhm.
But, I definitely was a little bit more exposed to older adults. And I always ended up having older friends when I was a child. I still do, but it's slowly vanishing as a possibility for me. Was that something that you felt as a kid? Did you have older friends? Did you get along well with older adults?
I got along definitely with older adults. I was very close with my grandmother. There was 13 of us cousins, and all in this area, and I was one of the younger ones, and so definitely got along with my older cousins. But my grandmother and I, on my mother's side, definitely had a strong bond, and I was kind of with her as the summer that she was dying, and it was but she was one of those grandmothers who let each of the cousins know that they were her favorite.
Of course. Yeah. Tell me about that experience with your grandmother when she was dying. Were you helping your mom and dad?
I was, spending the night with her, because she shouldn't have been getting up on her own. Cognitively, she was fine. Physically, she was getting frailer.
How old were you?
Let's see, I was just around my bar mitzvah age, so maybe 12-ish, around in there, 12 or 13. Death still wasn't part of my world. No one had, a couple of my grandmother on my father's side had passed away, but really there wasn't a lot of other deaths. So, and I wasn't as close to my father's mother as I was to my mother's mother. So, so even though I was watching somebody beginning to fail, I still didn't get it, that this was an end game, So I think that I processed that as it happened, and saw her deteriorate, and but again, when we finally got the word that she had passed, then I wasn't with her at the moment of death. She was in the hospital at that point, but I began to get it, and still, I don't think you ever fully get it, but then when people closer to me in age, started dying in car accidents or whatever, that's that was the bigger step in taking my breath away at the finality of all this.
What did it do to your understanding of meaning in life?
Well, I think there's some phrase about what people don't remember what you say, you remember how they make you feel. And that's what I remember about my grandmother, and English was not her first language. And so I didn't, she had a heavy accent, but I just remember how she always made me feel, just kind. She was just kind person, and I just felt nurtured. And so I think from that, that was probably a major life lesson, that, just if you can all help it, be kind. Certainly that's also a challenge when you're a teenager and you're going through all your angst and all your my parents are and my teachers are when you're a teenager and trying to figure out your place in the world. But in reality, I think most of my life I've just there's a couple of different ways you can be in life, and just try to be nice and kind.
Okay. So shifting back to your revolutionary years, you go to college, you studied undergrad, got out, and then how did you find your way here? Because you went back, you got your degree in...
I got in Maryland, right. So I was at Washington College in Maryland, got my degree in 1976. And then the winter of 76, 77 found me, again, with that idealistic approach to life, that maybe consume less, and it found me as basically the only picker on an orange grove outside of Oroville, California. And with me and all the stack of books that I had never read in college. So there was me and reading, Ulysses by James Joyce,
Wow.
and picking oranges during the day and reading at night, and hitchhiking into town once a week to take a weaving class. And as I look back upon the one and only weaving that I ever did in my life after living on that orange grove, I used a lot of orange.
Yeah.
That weaving,
It found its way.
And I would also have to say that the people that who I was working for ended up not being very kind. And the agreement had been, again, I was idealistic. I just was going to do this in exchange for room and board. They lived in town. I lived outside Oroville. Eventually, the board part of it really became slower and slower. So I ate anywhere between 15 and 20 oranges a day. But as of Washington's birthday, 1977, I have not eaten an orange ever since.
Really?
Yes.
As a vegan?
As a vegan, I'm
Boy, to take
done.
anything off the menu,
done,
it says a lot.
Oh my gosh,
Wow. That's okay. So that was your first literal and metaphorical taste of California.
Yes.
Was Oroville.
Right. And then soon enough, I was very proud to be part of the boycott of Florida oranges, because Anita Bryant was the spokesperson for Florida oranges.
I've heard of this.
Yeah,
I've heard of this from my friend Mike. Yeah.
She was very anti-gay,
Yeah.
and so there was a boycott called, and I was leading the front lines on that one. No more oranges for anybody. We're done.
Wow.
That really stuck.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, so and did you go back and study? You went back to...
I went back and forth to Connecticut different times, came back out, ended up working at the Russian River, up in Monte Rio at the Russian River Co-op.
Cool.
Monte Rio Co-op. I have a couple of cousins that live up that way.
Nice.
So I worked in the co-op, but again, food for people, not for profit, and worked in a different range of co-ops, different kinds of food concerns. Always trying to find work that I could be proud of and would feel like I made the world better by doing that. And worked in food co-ops, went back to Connecticut, ended up working at a home for emotionally disturbed kids, and probably was not the best employee, just because when you're in a position of like your heart was really open and bleeding for the kids, but at the same time the administration had a building and a program to run. I mean, I can understand their point of view. They were outgrowth of a nonprofit. It wasn't like they were being mean, but they had things they had to, rules and regulations, and I was a little bit too counterculture for that. And they were probably right more than I was, but I didn't know that.
Right.
So then I eventually made it back out to California, and 1981, after having coming out here a couple of different times, 1981, lived in Noe Valley, worked at first I was a barista before we even knew that word, for a place called Cameo Coffee. And one of the guys who would come in every day for his coffee, he had a small natural foods manufacturing business called Grain Dance, where he made seitan, which is a wheat gluten product. And I ended up working with him. So that got me into the food business, which I was in for a long time. Natural foods world.
I want to go actually just a little bit back, because you said something that I found really interesting about...
I'm glad there was something else.
There was multiple things that I found interesting, but specifically, you said something about not knowing how wrong you were and how right someone else is. That's like a pivotal moment in your life. I think in anybody's life, if they're being emotionally honest and intellectually honest.
Yeah.
How has that shaped you, and how did you learn that? Because it's hard to see when you're wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely when you're a young person, it's hard to see that you're wrong, because you're virtuous, and it doesn't matter that you don't have the experience that other people do. You have your convictions and your principles. I had gotten the job working at that home because a cousin of mine worked there, and she had gotten me the job, and they considered me, intelligent, and they considered me compassionate, and these kids were really challenged, and they had none of it was their fault. These had kids who had been, molested by their mothers or molested by their fathers. These were kids who had been in 14 different foster homes over the period of 8 years. These were kids who, and I didn't have that educational component, the psychological component, to really get it. I was operating at a grassroots thing, like these kids are broken and I'm gonna fix them, and that's not reality. Love does a lot, right? Because that was my last job, right? Love is the answer. But
What's the question?
yeah, and there's just not always, there needs to be love in conjunction with some other positive things.
Like a plan, or some know-how.
Therapeutic schedule, and that's what the place I worked for was strong on. And, I began to see that I wasn't helping as much as I thought. And I just, because, it's like you put a bandage on something that's a deeper wound. So anyway, they were, quite relieved, I believe, when I gave notice.
Well, the reason I'm fixated on that, I identify very strongly with that. I started and ran a nonprofit when I was in my 20s, working in renewable energy. Specifically, and this is around, Bush the Stupid's term, it's biofuel, that sort of renewable energy, which comes with a whole other, talk about land use, it's a whole other bunch of baggage. But I was very emotionally attached to the idea of being useful and helpful. And I thought I had discovered this great thing that people in the South needed to know about, from the farmers to everybody. And I put everything into it. And I was so convinced that I was doing the right thing because I felt like I was coming from a good place. And the things that I didn't know could have filled a university of information, but I was passionate about it. And learning that lesson, it's painful, to realize that you've done a good thing for the wrong reasons, or the wrong thing for however you want to.
Right. And I think it's still wonderful to be zealous, and passionate and excited, but I think somewhere along that line I learned, although maybe my family doesn't believe I've learned it, that you're not always right, and that you're not, or you don't, that there's always still something to learn. And I think somewhere along those lines, I learned, I began to believe that in every conversation you have, the people who come into our lives, it's not an accident. They're there. There's something to learn from every situation, whether it's somebody that you're sitting near on a train, or if you're on an airplane, or just somebody that you're walking by and you're hanging out in a bar with. But there's always something, if not a lot of thing, that you don't know.
Yeah. And to your point, there's a lot to be said for having some zeal and some passion for things. But I think we're in a moment in time, just culturally, where there's sort of an epidemic of certainty. People because you can Google and find some answer to whatever dumb question you have, and just like, well, that's the answer. I know this, and that's made people very certain. And I've become very skeptical of certainty, especially my own, which is paralytic in its way because you get so, well, what is right? What should I do? What should I believe? And
Right.
somewhere between zeal and just certainty that I'd like to find. And it seems like you've found some sort of equilibrium there.
Well, again, there's that phrase, man plans, God laughs. You know, because I mean, I think about all the different things that I've meticulously figured out. You know, this is it. You know, I mean, I think the only thing that we know is the answer is 42.
That's right. Yeah. But what is the question? So, okay. All right. I'll get off the philosophical stuff for a minute because I do want to continue on your journey because you've touched on LITA. I think I mentioned LITA. I want to get to LITA because I'm a tremendous fan of LITA. That was the answer. But we'll get there. So we're in Monte Rio. You've made your way out to the West Coast.
Made my way out to the West Coast, going back and forth, and then I'm working in natural foods.
Yeah.
I had actually worked in natural foods a little bit back in Connecticut, but
and you're doing sales? Is that
was what I did in Connecticut, Long River Natural Foods. I was started in the warehouse, ended up doing sales, you know, with all sorts of interesting products that nobody had ever tried before, like rice cakes and, you know, organic maple syrup and spruce tree natural food, macrobiotic bakery. But then in here we had seitan, and eventually we were living in San Francisco, my wife and I, and we sold Grain Dance to Wildwood Natural Foods. Wildwood Natural Foods was based in Fairfax, mainly making tofu. So we sold the seitan business to them, and I went along for the ride. And eventually that got us up to Marin. I worked at Wildwood for a number of years as a director of operations in terms of distribution. And then, and then from there, kind of continued on in different roles in the natural foods world. Briefly had a business called Safe at Home, where what did was and by that point I had gotten my certificate in applied gerontology from San Francisco State, had done my internship with the Alzheimer's Association, and ran a support group for the Alzheimer's Association, ended up being on their board of directors. And it was kind of like, you know, find a hole and fill it. I not only realized that people needed help baby-proofing their homes, but elder-proofing. So I was the guy to call to. Not a contractor. I don't have those skills, but I can install grab bars, you know, and others, and I can do a walkthrough of someone's house and see that carpet is going to slip, or that, you know, maybe the best idea is not to get a kitten, you know, and just kind of. So I began to use what I got in my applied gerontology program from San Francisco State on a hands-on basis by doing. There's a business was called Safe at Home, you know. So the picture was of home plate, right? Because I like baseball, so it was Safe at Home.
That still exists, no? Or is there's
other ones that are similar name to it. So I had that business for a while. Then you kind of went back and forth between that and natural foods, and then ended up really believing. One of the things that I was also very passionate about was newspapers. My brother was a journalist for decades. My father, as I mentioned, had been involved with the socialist newspaper in Connecticut. My parents really believed in the power of the press and the power of, you know, good news, you know, a positive, like the Walter Cronkites of the world. And so I got a job working in distribution for the Marin IJ. I really believed in the power of the importance of having a local newspaper. And this was starting in 2000. And, you know, at that point, there was right after that, while I was there, a number of different things happened. 9/11 happened. The Craigslist came along and really destroyed the cash cow where that newspapers had gotten so greedy about the classified ads.
Yeah.
It was newspapers. I mean, it was greed that killed them off. You know, they didn't have to charge that much, and Craigslist came along and made a big difference.
They made it
yeah,
free and easy.
free and easy. So I worked for them for the IJ and the Oakland Tribune and the whole family of newspapers. I'd gotten laid off, gotten rehired.
Were you doing sales or were you
I was doing
writing?
sales. I was in charge of all the people who were bringing the newspapers to people's homes, and I was also in charge of all the stores that sold the newspapers, all the newspaper racks, and also all the hotels that would carry the newspaper.
So learning how to organize many people.
Learning how to organize many people, learning, and again, just being nice, because especially, and again, people have no clue about the consequence of our current vibe about immigrants being a scourge on the nation. You couldn't get so many, as we're finding out, you can't go to a restaurant and
The
expect,
machine runs on us welcoming people.
right. And, and newspapers are the same way. Newspapers, I mean, at the time, I'm sure it's been cleaned up since then, but 80% of those drivers who get up at 4 a.m, and are delivering the newspapers, 80% of them, share the same Social Security number, and then of course after 9/11, a lot of those rules changed in terms of proving people's identity. But, so, I mean, again, and they're just, I think when I look back upon all the different jobs that I've had and all the different worlds that I've inhabited and all, I've got friends still from all those worlds. I've got friends from Greenwich Village. I got friends from college. I got, friends from, I do Zoom with my friends from high school once a month, so been very fortunate that that I've had some kind of radar that also attracts kind people. So I've been able to stay well connected with people in my life.
That's a gift, man. It's a tremendous gift to be able to make and maintain friendships. And you seem to still do it,
Yeah.
which is fantastic because I know it gets more difficult as you get older. I've experienced that myself. And so I got a few years to go. But so I want to get to, obviously to LITA. Maybe just tell everybody what LITA is.
LITA is Love is the Answer. It's a 51st year. It's a Marin County only nonprofit that matches volunteers with Marin County's isolated older adults, whether they are living in their own home, whether they're living in nursing homes, whether they're living in assisted living, or any other kind of retirement community situation. They are not drivers, they are not caregivers, they are not chefs, though they may be in their work life. They are friends. They are people who connect. And we don't charge for any of our services. We've never charged in 51 years. And we ask our volunteers for an hour a week. Many do more than that, just to help change someone's life. And what they find when they do that 1 hour a week is it's changed their lives too.
Yeah, it's very reciprocal. I have not spent any time working with LITA. I've gotten to know Jen Sequeira a little bit, and Barbara. But I've volunteered with Little Brothers, Friends of the Elderly, very similar.
In the city.
Yeah, in the city. And they're a national organization, and they're doing something similar, pairing isolated older adults with what I consider to be isolated younger people, because we've got these little black mirrors in our pockets that are very isolating.
Well, that's when I was very fortunate that I started working at LITA in 2022 as we were emerging out of our COVID isolations. And I was the recipient, and LITA was the recipient of this plethora of extremely talented folks in their 20s and 30s and early 40s who during COVID were working from home. And we are social creatures. Yeah. And they missed and they moved up from San Francisco and found this beautiful place to live in Fairfax or Novato or Sausalito, but they missed people. Yes. And so they were spending a lot of hours each day just talking to a computer. And their companies were very supportive of them also finding a volunteer space for themselves. And they found LITA, and just some amazingly talented folks came along, like Jen came along, you know, so it was really wonderful.
Well, there's something to that, the reciprocal nature of volunteering and helping someone who feels isolated, giving them something to look forward to and having, you know, a person that they can relate to in their life. But you doing that it's enriching to you as it is to the person with whom you're interacting. And that, I love that. I love that there's as much involved or as much to be gained from volunteering as there is to be a recipient of the volunteer's time. So you have spent a good bit of your career looking after and caring for people, but specifically older adults. My best friend when I was 12 was 72.
Wow.
I thought he was the coolest guy in the world, a guy named George.
Wow.
He was so much more interesting than all the kids that I knew. And we talked about, you know, having fought in the Korean War, been an artist for Disney. He would like tell me what Spanish women smelled like. But, you know, as a 12-year-old, like, what? You know, that type of thing. It's a whole lot more interesting than anything a 12-year-old kid's talking about. And I was hooked on the notion of older adults just being cooler and more interesting. And as I've gotten older, you know, a lot of your friends start to pass away, more so than just, you know, losing tragic in car accidents or disease. You just, old age takes your friends away. I imagine you've experienced some of that. And I'm curious to hear your perspective as someone a little bit further down the trail. What's it like for you to now, I mean, you're a retired person. You're getting closer by the day to being the person you always looked after. How do you feel about that?
A couple of different things. One is, you know, we all have birthdays, so we all know that chronology, but our bodies and our minds have their own chronologies. So I am extremely thankful that as far as I'm aware, I'm extremely healthy, that I'm able to exercise, I'm able to use my mind, I'm able to travel, I'm able to do a number of different things. And I believe, again, from that experience of seeing people in the over 70 world up to the early 100s, you know, I'm kind of in a golden moment that I could stay healthy and sharp until I'm 100, but the odds are against that. And the odds are, so right now, Andrew, I would feel that this is my chance and my opportunity to learn that there are 7 days in a week, not 5 days in a week, which I used to think there was only 5 days a week, and there was a week and there was the weekend. That's actually 7 days, that there's actually 24 hours in a day, not there is before work, and after work. And now it's like, and again, I've been extremely fortunate that in the last, almost my whole life, but particularly in the last several decades, I've only had great jobs. Haven't always had great bosses, but I've had great jobs. Right. And, you know, and I was very fortunate that my last job was with a nonprofit, with a great boss and a great board. I mean, all those wonderful ways to go to the next exploration.
Yeah. Rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You ready? You're not under obligation to answer them quickly, but
okay.
What's something that you believe now, or something you did believe when you were younger that you just don't anymore?
That there are, when I was younger, I couldn't believe that there was anybody who was evil. And now I know that, you know, that's true.
What do you think, where's evil come from?
Insecurity. Insecurity and greed. You know, and I think the root of greed is insecurity. I think it's just people who just don't feel good about themselves.
Evil is an emergent property, not like something that just is in you and then.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, yeah, I don't. I didn't take it that enough philosophy classes to understand about, you know, if evil was something that, you know, right. was part, you know, and I'm not religious enough to believe that either, you know.
Well, it's just interesting because you think about evil as this thing that is bred, it comes from insecurity and greed.
Yeah.
But so maybe we all have the potential for it. And so
Yeah.
let's
I've
avoid it.
You know, I mean, when I've done quote evil or totally selfish things, yeah, I know where exactly where it came from. It was because I was insecure about myself or about my finances or whatever it was. But it was a bad place to come out of.
What's the remedy for evil?
Belief in, you know, I guess going back to my father's socialist roots, you know, greatest good for for the greatest number, and you know, the idea that we're all in this together.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer. There you go.
If you could give a message to your younger self, what would that be?
It'll all work out.
Okay.
And keep on dancing.
Keep on dancing. Nice. How do people get involved with LITA? If you're here in Marin, how do
Okay, sure. LITA's just give them litamarin.org. You can give them a call or look them up on the web, or just go to their phone number and give them a call, 415-472-LITA, L-I-T-A, and they'll be happy to connect you, whether you have someone in mind that needs some support or that you want to be somebody volunteering, or if you have we have programs that involve the arts, we have programs that involve music, we have programs that involve taking seniors to the park, and you know, there's all different ways to get involved.
I would not ask this question of everybody, but you seem like the kind of guy who could pull it off. Do you have a favorite quote or something? I mean, you just started to recite the Gettysburg Address a moment ago. Is there anything, do you have like a piece, a poem, a thing that you like to recite?
Gosh.
Or do you want to sing a song?
How much time we got now? So I remember on my high school yearbook, it said, "Nullum magnum intelligium sine mixtura dementia." There's no great genius without a touch of madness. And that carried me through for a while. Then I realized it was closer to being the madness than the genius part. And then Abu Ben Adam, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace and saw within the moonlight in his room, making it rich and like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. "What writest thou?" The angel said, "The names of those who love the Lord." "In his mind one," said Abu. "Nay, not so," replied the angel. The angel wrote and vanished, but came again the next night, a great wakening light, and showed the names whom love of God had blessed, and Ben Adam's name led all the rest.
It's a beautiful place to end it. Thank you so much, David.
Sure.
Produced by Sound Legacy.